Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm diving back into the Hellboy 2019 universe, and I'm bringing you full spoilers for the upcoming film. I will run through as much information as possible that was given to me by two sources. Their attendance was verified and evidenced at a screening that took place in LA this week. You've been warned, this video is full on spoilers, so please do click off if you don't want to know anything about the movie, but to those that do click off, just know that it sounds like this movie is very, very good. I have to say this because one bellend on my last video didn't quite understand. I say apparently or allegedly because of course this is information that is passed on to me. Reputable sources, and it is evidenced of course, but I have to preface this with this is allegedly, and some of it is of course just their opinion. That being said, you've all been warned and you all now know, so let's get into the spoilers for David Harbour's Hellboy. Although this movie is not an origin film, we do get Hellboy's origin. They recreate the scene where Hellboy is summoned into this world by Rasputin and Cronin that we got in the 2004 movie, but there's a few distinct differences and some similarities. Rasputin looks much the same as he did, obviously a different actor. This isn't a big surprise because of course Rasputin looks like he does in the comics, so there's no real issue with that being the same at all. There is one difference though in characterization, and that's from Cronin. He resembles much more closely his comic counterpart, which again shouldn't come as too much of a surprise because we all know that Del Toro took an artistic license with his version of Cronin and did change him somewhat. This Cronin that we see in this new movie has a less rounded mask and is very, very comic accurate. Now, that's not where the differences end though. We had heard reports that Lobster Johnson was going to rock up in this film, which of course was somewhat of a surprise due to when he was active in the Hellboy universe. Well, he turns up in this scene. He rocks up with a group of American soldiers and BPRD agents and unleashes hell on the Nazis. He is an absolute badass in this scene and even delivers some cheesy one-liners, but in a fun way. He even goes so far as to brand Rasputin with a claw-shaped iron. The legendary Rasputin being branded by Lobster Johnson. Epic. Hellboy is then summoned and Trevor Broom almost kills him, but obviously decides not to at the last minute. The opening scene itself from the movie, to those familiar with the comics, is a close homage to the vampire hunting luchador arc from the comics, so that should hopefully fill a lot of people with some confidence. It's interesting to note that Hellboy in this new version is very, very much less like a teenager. One of my sources compared Ron Perlman's Hellboy to a teenager with teenager problems, which is really true. When you go back and watch the movie, he does have the attitude of a teenager going through puberty. David Harbour's Hellboy is very much more of an 18+ kid, someone who has moved out of his parents' home and is still somewhat struggling becoming his own man, but it's at least good to know they have adjusted the Hellboy characterization for this new universe. We had heard reports that there was filming in London, which is further confirmed by the leaked trailer that showed some scenes in London. This is completely true, and it's because Hellboy in this film is summoned to the BPRD branch of London to assist in hunting down giants, which is something again we had heard rumours of about this film. This calling of Hellboy for help though is actually a bit of a ploy. The BPRD London branch betray Hellboy and attempt to kill him. This is because of his destiny becoming a strong theme in this film, and obviously his allegiance is in question. However, this is not before Hellboy tackles some giants and displays just how strong he is. He's an absolute powerhouse in this movie, and another huge difference between Ron Perlman and David Harbour's. He is able to tackle 3 giants all on his own, killing them, and even taking one down by tackling its foot. Which ties into another aspect of the movie. The set design was apparently incredible, a very gothic vibe from it all, and very in keeping with the comics, something that will likely differentiate itself from the Del Toro movies again, although of course he did have a gothic vibe, it was very much in keeping with his own style, so again, a very clear differentiation. With respect to Hellboy's design, this will probably please a lot of people. He actually has hooves. Yep, again, back to his comic roots here in this new movie, and is much hairier than the Ron Perlman version, who was essentially hairless. So from a personal perspective, I'm sure the hairlessness and the overuse of hair in this movie is actually likely to help with the effects and masking of prosthetics on the body. But according to my source, David Harbour absolutely looked insane. He looked great in this movie, and the prosthetics were awesome. There are, however, some callbacks to Del Toro's version, or at least things which we had seen used from the comics in Del Toro's movies. They are used in this movie as well. This film takes the bump in the night mantra and the line in the sand phrases, which isn't bad at all, but those not familiar with the comics will probably look at this as a Del Toro ripoff more than anything else. Interestingly enough, Lobster Johnson has a lot of the one-liners in this movie, something my source pointed out to me as a positive though, so definitely keep that in mind. Baba Yaga makes an appearance in this film, the Russian witch, and keeping very closely to the comic books here, we see that she confronts Hellboy about her missing eye, which of course those aware of the comics know Hellboy shot it out. So there is a quick fight between them, and in this fight Baba Yaga's movements are displayed as being, and again I quote, incredibly freakish and disturbing. The fight dies down and Hellboy promises that he will actually give Baba Yaga his own eye to her later if she helps him by telling him where the Blood Queen Nimue is. And in another callback to the comics, and to please those after the R rating, we see Baba Yaga essentially stewing children with parts of their bodies hanging on hooks. Obviously some of this may be edited out to keep in with the rating system or shown incredibly briefly, but either way, this is a comic callback for sure, and it is something that will please those wanting that very hard R rating that they were promised. On the topic of the Blood Queen, her motivations are still very cliche, but Milla Jovovich's acting is okay. It serves its purpose at the very least, which in fairness is actually the best that we can hope for from Milla Jovovich. As long as it isn't noted as being glaringly bad, that's all a plus in my books. We know that Gragich is in the movie, working for Nimue, voiced by none other than Stephen Graham. Although the name might not be something you instantly know, you are likely to recognise him, as he has a very wide and pretty extensive career. He is apparently one of the highlights of the movie. He's the funniest character, and there is a scene where he invades a church and absolutely goes crazy. He quite literally tears patrons limb from limb whilst he searches for Nimue's head. Trevor Broom, Ian McShane, is sadly killed by the Blood Queen, which is a massive shame, but it's probably how they got the high caliber actor to sign on, knowing that he wasn't tied into any lengthy picture deals. Outside of this, it's also a better death than what he had in the comics, where he was killed by a frog monster. At least in this movie he's killed by something a little bit more powerful. Now we know from the poster that Hellboy grows his horns and he wields a sword, Excalibur. Yes, that's Excalibur. This is due to Merlin, which sadly is actually one of the negatives. Apparently his part is just somewhat phoned in, but it's short-lived and he convinces Hellboy to take the sword. His acting in this scene, like I said though, is just kind of off. However, he is in the prologue and his acting there is much better. So there's kind of a pro and a con. On the topic of Hellboy and his horns, he fully embraces his destiny, or at least in part. He has his crown lit, he grows his horns, he summons a bunch of demons, and these demons are said to be absolutely incredible. A very hard R scene. They impale people on their fingers, they rip people apart, and they even go so far as to flay their victim's skin off. To quote my source, it was glorious. To quickly round out the character information, Ben Damio does transform into the Were-Cheetah, but only twice, and it's smaller than seen in the comics, and it wasn't red. But all in all, it was very entertaining and nice to see. In terms of it being red or not, that's quite easy colour correction they could change from now until the movie's release, but it seems unlikely. Sasha Lane's Alice Monaghan apparently was actually very good, according to my source, which is nice to see. And outside of that, at last but not least, Abe Sapien. Yes, he is in the movie, but at the very end. It's a teaser and a setup for a sequel. Hellboy, Alice, and Ben Damio head to a Siberian research facility looking for a test subject. Alice wipes a dusty plaque that reads Ictus Sapien, and a webbed hand is seen popping up. So it's a nice setup for a sequel, and it's nice to see Abe Sapien at least make a tiny appearance. To note negatives really quickly, the gore potentially won't sit well with a lot of people, but that's obviously a pro. And there is also a very weird scene with respect to Hellboy's conception between his mother and father, which was noted as being very odd. The pacing was good though, super fun, some acting off here and there, but nothing in respect to narrative was a glaring negative, which is obviously hugely positive. So there you have it, full spoilers for the movie Hellboy. I'm aware many people will call this all into question and say I'm talking bollocks. That's fine. Come back when the movie releases and your trust in me is either shown to be right or wrong. Either way, that wraps it up here for me, and I pass it on to you. What do you think of all of this? For me, I can't wait for this movie. I'm really looking forward to it. I was somewhat worried because it seemed that Lionsgate were burying it. Haven't had a trailer, so it was a very worrying marketing plan, but it seems those worries were extremely misplaced. Anyway, and as always though, please do let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you are new here, please do hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and a share. As always, I've been Mr. Age. Take care.